How's it going, you guys? So in this video I'm going to be discussing how you can lower your blood pressure naturally. So it's actually been proven that insulin resistance is the primary cause for high blood pressure, more so chronic high blood pressure. And this has been proven through multiple intervention studies, including one of my favorites, which I will actually have a video specifically breaking down all aspects of this study here in the future. So subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, if that's something you're interested in. But the A to Z weight loss study, if you look at the full text, okay, basically this was a study that was funded by the government at the time, and they directly compared the Atkins diet, where they start off, so they compare the Atkins diet to the Ornish diet, which is a plant-based diet. Atkins is low carb, and Ornish is low-fat vegetarian. And also the DASH diet, which was at the time the clinically recommended diet for lowering blood pressure, and it was specifically designed to lower blood pressure. And then also the Zone diet, which is a mixed macronutrient diet. And so they compared these four diets head to head. And all of the diets were calorically restricted except for the Atkins diet. In the Atkins group, they actually allowed them to eat as many calories as they want, as long as they controlled their calories in accordance to the Atkins guidelines. And what they found, and this was this is a 12-month study, so this was one entire year that they followed each intervention group, where they put them all on this diet, on each diet, right? And for 12 months, they followed each diet group to see the results that each of them got. And they actually measured health markers, blood markers at baseline, and then every 3 months they measured blood markers again. The Atkins group started off in the induction phase, which is essentially a ketogenic diet where they eat under 20 grams per day. And so that lasts about one month, maybe 3 months. And over time, they actually allowed them to add back in carbohydrates up until the 12th month. So the Atkins group started off low carb, and they added carbs back in over time. And what they found is the Atkins group actually had triple the improvements in blood pressure, as well as double the improvements in weight loss, double the improvements in HDL cholesterol, and triple the improvements in hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of diabetes. And they measured a variety of other blood markers as well. Obviously, the LDL cholesterol, which is not actually cholesterol, it's a lipoprotein, in the Atkins group was actually extremely high. That was the only marker that didn't do so well. So essentially, over a 12-month period, every single test, every 3 months, the Atkins group did better on blood pressure. And that was the only intervention trial that was lasting over 6 months that actually directly measured low-fat diets and all these other diets that were calorically restricted to an Atkins diet head-to-head, despite the Atkins dieters being able to eat whatever they wanted. And so essentially, the Atkins diet showed a triple improvement in blood pressure. Now, if you're interested, this study is an A to Z weight loss study, and you could obviously do a Google search and find it. You're not going to find the blood markers that were tested in the abstract. You have to look at the full text. So if you look at the full text and you look at the graphs, they'll actually have an entire chart of the blood measurements for each diet group for every 3 months. And so that's very important if you want to lower your blood pressure naturally, because the main cause of chronically elevated blood pressure is actually insulin resistance and has nothing to do with salt. The only relevance to sodium intake that high blood pressure has is the fact that insulin resistance essentially causes your body to retain water and minerals. And so it's not that salt causes high blood pressure, it's that insulin resistance causes your kidneys to hold on to more salt and more fluid, which causes greater pressure in the blood and arteries. But if you take care of the underlying insulin resistance, like the subjects did in the study I mentioned, well then you're going to notice that you can consume as much salt as you want essentially and not worry, unless of course you have chronic kidney disease or heart failure. So that's the first natural way of lowering high blood pressure, and it is the most effective way because it's addressing the root cause. The second thing that you can do to lower high blood pressure is going to be taking magnesium supplements and making sure you get plenty of potassium in your diet. So again, this goes back to the sodium theory. It's not necessarily high sodium that causes high blood pressure, even in the case of insulin resistance. But more so, there's a balance of potassium to sodium, and magnesium actually helps to balance out the potassium in the blood. And then obviously insulin resistance again is still the causal factor, but if you get enough potassium in your diet, sodium is more readily excreted. And so getting enough potassium in your diet is essential. And taking a readily absorbable form of magnesium, probably the best form of magnesium for high blood pressure is going to be taking warm baths with Epsom salts. Another great form of magnesium is going to be taking magnesium citrate, 400 milligrams before bed. And contrary to what a lot of people claim, 400 milligrams of a proper magnesium citrate supplement is unlikely to cause diarrhea like a lot of people claim. But if you take it in excessive doses of 800 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams, then you could possibly create a situation where you have disaster events. But this will help you sleep, and it should lower your blood pressure and help your muscles relax as well. Although Epsom salts, baths, and magnesium oil seem to be one of the most effective ways because it's more readily absorbed through the skin into the blood rather than if you take it in an oral form. But whatever form you take it in, avoid magnesium oxide at all costs because that will definitely cause diarrhea. I personally have found that magnesium glycinate, which is the form most people claim is the best, actually causes me diarrhea at any dose higher than 200 milligrams. Therefore, I stick to magnesium citrate or a mixed magnesium chelate, or I'll take magnesium carbonate here and there, even though it's really not very bioavailable. And Epsom salts baths are probably the best. So obviously the third thing you can do to lower your blood pressure is meditate, practice mindfulness, reduce stress, reduce your aggressive caffeine intake. And so basically, instead of taking caffeine supplements or coffee, start to drink green tea or yerba mate. I think green tea is probably the best form of caffeine for people with high blood pressure because some of the polyphenols like epicatechin gallate or ECGC found in green tea, as well as the theanine, especially the theanine, actually have significant relaxing properties on the blood vessels as well as the nervous system. And so when you drink green tea instead of coffee, what that's going to do is it'll still give you a slight boost in creativity and whatnot, but it doesn't stimulate you in the way that caffeine generally would from other sources, especially coffee and caffeine supplements. And actually, green tea has been shown in cohort studies and intervention trials to lower blood pressure. And so that's why I personally would advocate drinking green tea if you suffer from high blood pressure. So obviously that means substituting coffee and isolated caffeine for green tea. It does not mean to just add green tea on top of your already crazy caffeine intake. Beyond that, if you don't like green tea, it's vitally important that you reduce your overall intake of caffeine in general, as that's going to, at the very least, aggravate your existing high blood pressure condition. And it's definitely not going to be doing you any favors if you have high blood pressure. Other than potentially increasing fat oxidation and offsetting some of the insulin, it might actually help with insulin resistance slightly. But if you're not addressing the nutritional factor, like I mentioned before with insulin resistance, then no caffeine in the world is going to really make a positive difference. It's only going to hurt you. And also, let me say that just because you've been tested for diabetes using hemoglobin A1C test or a fasting glucose test, just because you have a healthy, you test in a healthy range in those tests does not mean that you don't have insulin resistance. If you really want to test if you have insulin resistance or not, and if that's causing your high blood pressure, take a fasting insulin test. And if you have a high fasting insulin, then that definitely points towards diabetes or insulin resistance. But the thing is, insulin resistance can actually be detected 10 to 20 years before hemoglobin A1C tests will pick it up, which is a standard of care. And most doctors will tell you don't have diabetes or insulin resistance based on hemoglobin A1C, when in reality you could be suffering from insulin resistance, but your doctor doesn't know because he hasn't done a fasting insulin test, which again can detect that 10 to 20 years before ever detecting it on a hemoglobin A1C test. And so it's vitally important that you understand insulin resistance is a primary driving factor behind high blood pressure, regardless of stress or sodium intake. So again, that should be your main area of focus. And then obviously, especially if you do feel generally stressed most of the time, you should probably be, again, addressing mindfulness, reducing caffeine intake, drinking green tea, and maybe experimenting with things like L-theanine and 5-HTP, which are relaxing supplements. Especially theanine, which is found in green tea, is probably the safest supplement you can take. Theanine has been found to be safe even at very high dosages in experiments. 5-HTP definitely requires a lot more monitoring and should be taken with caution, only at the minimum effective dose of approximately 50 milligrams once before bed, and then slowly raising that to 50 milligrams in the evening and the night, and then you can increase the frequency of the dose and then increase the dose. And that will help to neutralize stress, help improve sleep, as well as relaxation of the nervous system, which can translate into lower blood pressure over time. Now, theanine, on the other hand, has direct blood pressure lowering effects, as well as stress lowering effects. And so taking theanine, as well as substituting your caffeine intake for green tea, on top of a low-carb diet and a general mindfulness, meditation, and sleep restoration practice, is probably going to eliminate your high blood pressure problem altogether. So if you're on diuretic medications and all these other things for high blood pressure, that's unfortunate considering the drastic side effects, including the worsening of heart health and the worsening of high blood pressure and kidney function as well. Especially considering we have these proven remedies I mentioned in this video that doctors are not made aware of because most of them don't study nutrition. They only study, they learn about pharmaceutical medications and diagnostic tests in medical school, because medical school is education on medicine, and medicine is specifically referring to medical drugs, medical procedures, and medical diagnostics. It's not talking about nutritional therapies. We're talking about pharmaceutical therapies. And that's why doctors don't tell you this, despite the fact that they have good intentions, obviously. And they really do want to help, but they just aren't armed with the right education unless they educate themselves in their spare time or get an extra certification of some kind. So leave your questions and comments down below, and if you have any questions, if you want me to link you the studies, post in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, because I always forget to post the links in the description, which is why I told you all how to find the study in the data yourselves, just because I know I'm lazy. So talk to you all very soon. Post those questions down below. Love you guys.